All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Student Success Stories on Max School Prep TV. Today, we have my wonderful friend and colleague, Miss Mariamawit. Just to give a little backstory on how we know each other, she is a Baldwin Scholar at Duke, so both of us are in the same scholarship organization that works to empower women in their leadership. And so, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mariamawit. Tell us where you go to school, tell us where you're from, tell us what year you are. And then on this theme of leadership, because I totally scripted this before we started this interview, is what does it mean to be a female leader to you? So, all you, Mariamawit.
Perfect. So my name is Mariamawit Abebe. I was born in Ethiopia, but I live in Texas like most of my life, specifically Houston. Um, I'm studying computer science at Duke, so I'm a senior now. And the last question, what being a female leader means to me, I think personally, it's sort of just like being a leader, but to like such a higher scale of like expectations. Because like as a woman, you're sort of expected to, first of all, as a leader, actually be like the person who can guide everyone, who thinks fast on their feet, can make those decisions, and it's just like overall can be looked up to as a person or a role model. But then as a woman, you're put at like a certain other level where you're not just that leader, but now you're expected to be perfect all the time. So I think I want to change that definition and just be like female leader is just someone who can make mistakes, grow from them, and still inspire others.
I love that answer, Mariamawit. And I just want to flag that if you see me taking notes throughout, it's me kind of giving, like putting pins that I want to return back to. So some things that you said that I definitely want to come back to at a later point when it's pertinent to our conversation is this theme of like how perfectionism has affected you in your Duke career, and then also this theme of resilience and making mistakes but being able to bounce back from them and being able to grow for them. I'm going to ask for some anecdotes later, but just know that I am listening. I'm just writing so that I can actually remember. But first I want to touch on your sort of family background. So you said you were born in Ethiopia. Tell us a little bit about how long you were there, when you came to the States, and how you feel that for maybe culture of your parents and of you have instilled values in you that have kind of set you up for success, both professionally and academically.
Yeah, great question. So literally I was born there, and then I think we left when I was like maybe 3 or 4. And my family and I, we all immigrated to the States. And I think just like growing up mainly in the States, but having a family who is from another country has like impacted my views of like everything. Like that culture has like impacted not only like what I think about for success, but also like other values. But mainly for success, I think there's just like ideology where you're supposed to work hard and like not really let that define everything you do. Like you're supposed to work hard, try to break all sorts of barriers. But with my family, there's still an expectation for you to respect other people, like elders, respect other like friends, and not really value things like money, but more like sometimes it's like prestige, but also like family and love and like caring for others. And I think also another element is just like my parents specifically are very academically focused. Like they push us all to like just do our best and like commend us whenever we're doing well. But then there isn't like an aspect of like fear of like making mistakes as much. It's just you don't want to because you want to like make them proud and stuff.
I think a lot comes up there, and my first thing that I want to touch on is this idea of barriers. What barriers do you feel like specifically you and your family have had to overcome being immigrants? But also, I'm taking it your parents didn't go, like, went to school in probably Ethiopia, but not here. So, like, what was that like of being sort of this trailblazer in the American school system, and did that play into barriers for you as well?
Oh yeah, another great question. I love that. So like literally, I think it's more for my older siblings where they broke those first barriers whenever they came here. They were a lot older than I was. and they had to deal with like transitioning from like that mindset of like Ethiopia schooling, like and
Wait, how old
educate.
were they? How old were they?
The
Like, how old
oldest
are they? Much older than you?
right now, the oldest is like maybe 36 or something.
So like 15 years older than you.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
some of
whoa,
them
whoa. Hold up. Okay, dang, that's intense because they literally did so much of their schooling in Ethiopia.
exactly. And then
Whoa.
like imagine all the things we go through at that age, like
Hmm.
preparing for like college applications, preparing to figure out like what you want to study in the world, and then you have to deal with the language barrier and like
Hmm.
learning that cultural barriers. So there's a lot of respect I have for them for handling that. And then the barriers that like specifically all of us sort of had to deal with were defying expectations externally. Like a lot of the time that like when people consider immigrants, they're always just like, not always, but like some people I knew in Texas would think that like immigrants are like taking everyone's jobs and like they're somehow sneaking in, they don't deserve it, but somehow they get it and they steal it from like true Americans. But in reality, it was just really hard because we were also like low income. So I remember like having to fill out my own like free school applications and then using that to then like have to deal with like, oh, for college applications, I also have to bring in that low income stuff so then I can like apply to as many colleges as possible. And like a lot of the barriers just felt like externally created by like other people, but then the ones my parents actually valued were us getting everyone going to college, like all of my siblings and I. Um, and then also there's they really want us to go to like that med school or like become a lawyer, become like some sort of like prestigious expectation or like role profession, and then really make them like think, wow, we made it in America. So that's where like I really felt like the expectations were, it was always like sort of career and academically based.
Tell me what your siblings do. You have two older siblings, is what it sounded like you said.
I have five older siblings.
Hmm.
I know.
You're the baby?
I am. I know. Best
Oh,
spot.
that is so sweet. Okay, so tell me what everybody does. You're interested in comp sci, but tell me, go cut it through the list. This is me easing us into our next question. So that's why I want to paint the picture.
Perfect. Yeah. So my oldest brother, he's a pharmacist.
Mhm.
Um, and my oldest sister, she switched from hotel and hospitality management to now being a TPM, so technical product manager.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
uh, my other brother, he is something at like an oil company. He just went from petroleum engineering to like sort of more of a management role. So he's not as much of the technical side anymore. And then my other sister, she's a product manager or program manager, I forgot, at a tech company. And then my other sister is a software engineer, rotational sort of PM management-ish thing at another tech company.
And then you're going to go into the comp sci field.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to figure out how to word this question in a way that is tactful, but like it is going to involve a stereotype. And I think in my mind, and I think in other Americans' mind, like there's this stereotype around immigrant families that, yeah, I can understand the whole like taking our jobs. Like that's not the one that I want to touch on, but just this idea that like this making it in America, right? Like I find that a lot of people who have come to America from other countries or whatever, there is this expectation, especially around the kids, to like make their parents proud. And you kind of touched on this, to sacrifice, like to almost pay forward all the sacrifices that your parents made for you to get you here, right? And I just like wonder how that affected you, Mariamawit, because I mean that's intense for you to say like, yeah, my parents were like doctors, lawyers, like these big heavy hitting careers. And how do you feel like that sort of influenced like your flexibility in school and like, not wanting to let them down, but also trying to follow passion and pursue what you want to do? What were those things like for you? And I hope that this is like, I hope that this is not like a weird, like offensive question, but I feel like other people will be able to relate to this sort of experience, you know?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important discussion. Like, regardless of like however it ends up worded, I totally get what you're saying. And like, I think that it's something that I see a lot of, and like I can tell in myself that it's just still there too, like the ideology that like your parents brought you here and they did all of this stuff, and then this is how you're spending your life. And I'm like, I have to like not think that way, because I'm like, regardless of like what your parents did for you, you're still like, whatever you do, you're still doing what you can, and that's what should be the like goal and what should be praised. But it was honestly like something I dealt with like a lot, like especially in high school. Like I took so many classes. I figured out then that computer science is the best thing. I'll be able to get a lot of money, and then I can like make my parents proud, you know, like work at some big tech companies and like have all this prestige and whatever. And then I was even like, I was thinking about going into like mechanical engineering as well, to like double major. I never did that, but like I was thinking about it, and I was just like, oh my God, just like getting as many degrees as I can while I'm here at Duke University, because they really love that like sort of lift up it gives me. But it's really damaging, because I think like there were so many things that I left like unaddressed, like especially in high school, that like ended up like turmoiling to like things in my life now. Like nothing super bad, but like still just like really hard to like live up to that image every day. So it's like from whatever they're thinking and their wishes for me, it gets like sort of snowballed into this, you can never make a mistake, or you have to be flawless, you have to do everything you can, work every single day, never take a break. But that's not actually what my parents wanted. So that's something that like I appreciate them for. They, whenever they notice like things getting super stressed for me, even when I was in high school or now, they're just like, relax, like it's never that serious. Like they always want me to just, you know, enjoy my life and be happy. So I think that's an important thing I was like grateful for my parents. Like they want me to do well, but I don't think they would ever want it to go so far as like I'm completely unhappy and I hate what I'm doing every single day. So that was something I really appreciated, but not every family is like that. Some are just like, well, suck it up, get another degree, go to law school or something, and then you'll be happy with like whatever job you find, or like work should make you happy. So yeah.
I I really love that you brought up kind of how you were able to have this breakthrough moment with your parents, because I think so much of the time, us kids who are very family oriented and who love our family, we sort of build these assumptions in our mind of what we think our parents want from us. And then when they're like, oh, well, yeah, we just want you to be successful because we love you. But like, bro, you don't need to kill yourself or anything. You don't need to like go overboard. I mean, sometimes it just boils down to even like asking your parents, like, hey, what is it that you want from me? Because this is how I'm feeling. And is this right? I mean, I just had a breakthrough conversation with my dad the other day. Um, and I was like, Dad, I just feel like I've never really had a choice about going to law school. And, it just like that is very stressful for me because I don't feel like I was ever given the opportunity to really think anything else. And he was like, Mackenzie, I'm sorry if I presented it in a certain way, but I wanted I want you to go to law school because I want you to be able to have the credibility that gets you in the door. I don't care what you do with your life, but I want you to be best set up to make the difference that you want. And in my over 50, almost 60 years of shoot, is my dad in his 60s? Damn. Like in all of that experience, like I know the sort of weight that a lot of carries. But like, you want to go into the nonprofit world after or whatever, like, do you, right? But because I love you and I care about you, this is sort of my advice, right? And so that isn't everybody's situation, Mariamawit, and I'm glad that you and I are both acknowledging those nuances. But there are other people like us who sometimes it just takes like talking to our parents and sharing what's on our heart, And I love that you also mentioned that at the end of the day, it is your life, you know. And I hate to say like one day our parents are gonna croak, but they will. They will croak one day. They will not be here, right? And like, who are we living for? Are we living for us, who has to live that extra however many years, or are we living for them? They can't do anything from the grave, and I'm just, I'm being like flippant right now, but the point is you've got to prioritize you.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you phrased it that way because so many people will like work themselves to like the bone and then end up in like careers or jobs or relationships that they don't even want because they're living up to some image their parents may have told them that they need to do. But in reality, you know yourself the best. So I think the best thing is just to go for what makes you happy in the end because you are literally the person who's going to live that life. And it's a long life, thank God, but like also like you're gonna have to deal with whatever you choose for so many years. So it's best to do what like makes you happy.
Absolutely, I agree. Um, so before we pivot into like your college years, I want to talk about how you feel like socioeconomic status kind of informed your college application process. And you can take that wherever you want, but I know that other folks who could identify with coming from a more low income background, sometimes they feel like, man, like, should I even apply to a school like Duke where that price tag is, you know what I mean? Right. So talk to us a little bit about what your thought process was and maybe any advice that you have for students that are in a similar situation.
Yeah, I think financials is probably was probably the most important decision I think in my college decision making stuff. It was just really tied into like the career I wanted and then also considering what would be the financial impact of attending one of the schools that I was going after. So the biggest thing was like first of all my college application fees. I got those covered because I was on like free reduced lunch at my school. So they also paid for like any colleges I wanted to apply to. It made my decisions and like career path so much easier.
Do
But
they pay for standardized testing too?
oh, do people have to pay for that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess they covered it for me. I don't
Okay.
remember. Yeah, 'cause I don't.
So you didn't
Yeah.
pay for SAT or ACT? Yeah. So I want to pause you and like just spotlight that of that is I do college advising right now and that is still very much a thing. If any student is on free and reduced lunch at their school, go talk to your college counselor if you don't know the steps to be able to get all those application fees waived and get standardized test fees waived because I had to pay for all that. And that is, I mean, that would have saved thousands of dollars, right? Now I didn't qualify, but I'm just saying, like Mariama, with that stuff adds up. So I'm glad that you're, letting us know that there are things in place to sort of support students from a lower financial background. Keep going
Yeah,
though. Keep going.
especially for the AP exams, because that gives credit for college as well. So that helped me like every single day I look at my transcript. Anytime I look at my transcript, I'm like, thank God this is like a semester's worth done. But beyond that, like being able to not worry about the financial fees for getting prepared for college was amazing. So definitely loved that. And then whenever I was looking at the actual colleges, it turned out that like the private universities that I got into had the best financial aid packages whenever they're presenting scholarships from the universities themselves. So the state schools were like honestly like they acted like I had money that I knew I didn't have. I'm like, where are you getting this like $15,000 bill from? I'm sorry, like I can't do that. And then I was most likely going to go for like loans if I had to, if that was the only school I got into at first, because I didn't know about Duke and some of the other universities. But then a scholarship program reached out to me, which would have made like my tuition there free for the state school. So there are programs where like if you don't reach out, sometimes they'll reach out to you and like want to cover everything for you. But I realized like Duke specifically was the best place because even though I have to pay like maybe small amounts of money random times or I get better refunds some years, but it was just like there's so much offered at Duke. Like there are programs here that I really loved and it really felt like at private universities you get so much more given to you because they have like donors that like fund so many programs here and want students to become so well-rounded that state schools are kind of like you're tossed around and then you figure things out yourself and it doesn't feel as supported. I also forgot what the original question was, if you could remind me.
No. You answered it. You completely answered it. And some things that I want to spotlight about what you said is, so I don't know what your experience was like, but like with counseling, with like a high school counselor, but how did you find out about things like, oh, private schools offer better financial aid packages, or that there's like fee waivers for free and reduced lunch? How did that stuff? How'd you learn about that stuff? Was it because of your older siblings?
Not really as much because there were issues like most of them were still transitioning to like American life. So I figured
Mhm.
a lot of good things from them, but that stuff specifically, free reduced lunch, waiving my college application fees. I think I found out from the College Board website. And
Mhm.
then I just think there was something that mentioned talking to your counselor. So I did, and then they gave me the resources for that. I even got a coupon from them for SAT prep course,
Mhm.
which really helped. And then what was the other thing you asked me about?
I think you touched on it. I think you did. And so to kind of recap in sum, what I'm hearing here is, for those listening, I hope something that you can learn from what Mariamawit said is a few things. One, you've got to be willing to go and be scrappy and put in the independent research on your own. There sometimes that stuff is going to be easy to find, like on the College Board website. People know about that. That's more well known with AP courses and all of that. But sometimes you got to go, you need to knock down the door of your high school counselor. I get it, not all of them are supportive, but the thing is, y'all, if there is money in this world, and if you are feeling strapped in any way, you cannot allow that to determine your fate. You've got to make a way, and it's through talking to people like Mariamawit that I hope that you can see that when you are scrappy and you are willing to pull strings and be the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, you know what I mean? That things will fall into place. The other thing is, I know that it's not very well known or talked about, so I'm glad that you mentioned this idea of, it's the schools with the biggest price tag that offer the most financial aid. And like, people are very in the dark about that, because what they don't realize is, just like you said, places like Duke and other elite institutions have got the endowments, they've got the donors, they've got all these people pouring money into the school. And number two, anybody that Duke lets into their school, they want them there, right? So they are going to make a way, especially if you raise hell and are like, hey, y'all got my estimated family contribution off. Y'all gonna need to revisit. You want me here? Let's change this bill. Like, go and push and go and, um like I said, raise hell and be the squeaky wheel. And that will work at all private institutions, just because those tend to be the universities with the biggest budget and the biggest way to support the attendance of their students. And Mariana, I don't know if you heard about this, but like, I'm pretty sure at Duke they have just like allowed all North Carolinian residents below a certain income. Like, I think it's like free tuition for them or something. Am I getting
Oh
this
wow,
wrong?
that's
No, okay,
amazing.
okay. Wait. Well, don't quote me on that, because I was hoping that you would have known. But I thought I got an email over the summer where it's like North Carolina or South Carolina, maybe both, but I definitely know North Carolina. And there, I don't know if it's free, but I know that there is a significant financial aid um, help for people below a certain income. So the point is like, don't allow price tag to scare you, especially at the in private institutions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and another thing about attending the school of your state,
Mm-hmm.
state schools, they sometimes give like this grant to people who are in their second year and like next year's. And my siblings talked about whenever they went to schools in Texas, where after your first year, you're eligible for like this grant just for being a resident of your own state.
There
So
you go.
some, yeah, and it's a helpful thing in addition to like the like Pell Grant that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's from the government, the federal government.
Yes, exactly. And it's
Yep, yep.
really helpful and it qualifies you for some other grants as well. Like if you're a Pell
Mm-hmm.
Grant recipient, then you can get this thing or you can get
Mm-hmm.
this thing. There were like other expenses at Duke that helped me out, like having required insurance. My family we're more of like, since insurance is, it was expensive, it's more like you get it from your job or you like don't get it. So after
Mm-hmm.
I became like an adult and the state of Texas stopped covering my insurance, I wasn't on insurance, so Duke gave me their insurance and then also
The
pays for
student
it.
medical insurance plan, the SNP.
Yeah. So
See that?
I
You see how stuff?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's Oh, and then there are things like I wasn't expecting that would be a financial thing. It isn't super positive, but there are like expenses like, paying for our laundry that I
Yeah.
didn't really
Yeah.
and then it wasn't a big deal, but like you have to be prepared for like sometimes there's caveats to like your university education that you have to be aware of. But I think it's worth going here. Like those small things, especially like whenever you're senior, you can always live off campus and enjoy like a nice refund from Duke. And it's
Mhm.
just really good to like go somewhere like here that covers so many of the things and like you feel like, I don't know,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
parts of your life are like well taken care of.
I'm just, yeah, Mariama, you're just getting me fired up because the thing is like the reason I do these interviews, the reason that I run this nonprofit is because I believe with every ounce of me that education opens doors and high quality education that you gotta pursue it. If that's in the cards for you, look, not everybody wants to go to a 4-year college, but pursue the best education that you can. And like I said, be scrappy about making it work. One door closes, you better figure out another way to open a third door, right? And like it will fall into place. I believe that. I believe that when you are the speaker, that's how I live. I'm like, I don't care if I'm annoying, that somebody's gonna answer whatever I'm saying. You know what I mean? And like this sort of anecdote from you proves that. I'm just getting worked
Yeah.
up in the best way.
Yeah. That you care. And I think it's like you have to remind yourself, well, like everyone's education, like it's only for you, really.
Good,
So
good.
what you make of it, like going after it and seeking the education you want, like whatever well-rounded like aspect you want out of your life, you can get here if you just
Mhm.
like it and get resources that can help you because it's hard to do it on your own, but like there are things out there that can help you get there. And
Absolutely.
helped me a lot was my high school. We had
Mhm.
this scholarship page, so you could just like scroll through it, read through, and like see, oh, I qualify for this. Let me send that
Yep.
application.
Yep.
Like I don't
And
I
there are
got
scholarships specifically for you've got to be below a certain income to get it. There are scholarships that are out there just like that.
that. And sometimes like I know with government programs, they'll even pay for your entire tuition if you say like, oh, I'll work for you for like 5 years,
Yep. And
which
that's what I'm looking at for law school. That's exactly what I'm looking at.
yeah, nice because it helps. Like you don't have to worry about anything as long
Sure
as you say
does.
the only way you have to pay for your tuition is if you end up like leaving the program or something.
So
So it's a good option for some people.
absolutely. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit, and I want you to talk about how did you get into like how did you find comp sci as your passion? It sounded like it started in high school based on what you said, but talk to us a little bit about how that came to be and what made you end up deciding to drop the whole engineering interest. Because I know you said for a part of time you thought you were going to do that, but no longer. So yeah, those are kind of a two-parted question.
Yeah, so for computer science, it started off because my brother mentioned it to me. He like described it as this new thing. This was back in like 2016 or something. So we had like a bunch of tech stuff all around, but like it wasn't to like what it is today where we have chat GPT, all of these things that these buzzwords of like AI, machine learning. But like back then it was just like something cool you saw on TV and like, Google or like Microsoft. But he just described it as like this new big thing that like everyone has to get on. And I really like the idea of like computer science from like television or like those sci-fi movies or books where you get to see like robots and then people get to program it and make like society so much better or worse. And I was like, of course I want to be part of the better. So like I thought computer science would be such a fun path to pursue. I took a class in high school, like the AP computer science one, and it was fun to like do some problem solving games with like a little bit logical thinking. So when I came into Duke, I pursued computer science. I thought mechanical engineering would help me get a leg up in like oil and gas industry because that's such a big thing in Texas. I was kind of after that for a little bit. But I honestly wasn't as interested in the engineering aspect as I thought I would be. And math at Duke is not my favorite thing ever. Yeah, big thumbs down. I loved it in high school, hated it here. So I just decided computer science, let me focus on that and find an interest that's a bit more broad. So like out of oil and gas. I found like more interest in like tech companies then. And I was like going after it. And then now where I am today, I'm really interested in like getting towards the inclusivity side. So making sure that like tech and programs that we have at like whatever company I go after, it's supposed to be supporting more people than it is now and more universal. So then everyone can enjoy it and not have things be exclusive to some party or people not know about like what great opportunities there are and feel like more supported there.
I really like sort of that how you came to know that comp sci narrowed down is what you are interested in pursuing. And I think two things that really stood out to me about what you said, and this has come up in some of the other interviews that I've done, is this idea of like, I think that the best type of career is one where you're good at it, and two, you love it, right? Like if you can find the sweet spot between where those two things intersect, you're made out for a really good life, right? And
Yeah.
like you got to recognize your gifts, you got to recognize your strengths. And I will say the caveat to, are you good at it? Look, not everything that we love comes easy, but can you be good at it, right? Like with the hard work, can you can you buckle down and make that um something that you can spend your life doing, right? Because that's key. Um, and I feel like that came into play when you were talking about taking math at Duke. You were like, man, I don't like this. Like this ain't for me. So don't continue. Don't dedicate yourself to something that's just not going to fly. I would love to sort of switch gears and really narrow in on your Duke experience. And a fun question that popped into my mind is, you're a senior now, right? So I want you to put yourself back into your like freshman year self, because like the people that we're talking to with this you are close to being like a freshman in college. And tell us, what is it that you were afraid of or you were nervous about going into college, and now as your senior yourself, what's the reassurance that you can offer to, like, if you could go back in time and be like, hey, little Mariamawit, like, I know you're worried about this, but like, whatever, what would you say? Does that question make sense?
Yes, it does. It's just hard to, honestly, when I think about it, it's just so hard to place myself like that's like 3 years ago, 4 years ago now. Like, oh my God. But I think the biggest thing I was worried about was like making a mistake because I was like such a like A student, AP classes, like clubs, everything. Like I had it all together. And then whenever I was approaching college, so many people were talking about like the mistakes you make your freshman year and like in college. I was like, well, fine, I just won't make any mistakes. And I was so terrified of it that like whenever I made my first one, which is like getting a C my freshman fall, I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna like die tomorrow. Like no one's gonna like take anyone who has a C on their like transcript. Like, what is this? And then from there, it made it so much easier to like accept the next mistakes I made because I'm like, okay, I know what the bar is for myself, and I'm honestly not below it yet. Like I'm making mistakes, but like this isn't the point where I'm like I'm so disappointed in where I have like come to, but it's more so like, oh wow, so this is just me recognizing my capability and whenever I'm like just really pushing it to the limit and I can't go any further. So that was like a big thing that like I think now as a senior I'm really glad I did in like a messed up way. It's just like I'm glad I made that first mistake so then it made the next one easier to like accept and move on rather than like it building up to the pressure so much that like I make regrets that I make mistakes that I would actually regret and like lives a life that I would hate or just like have something in my life that I'm not proud of anymore. So I think now like it's just so much easier to like look back and say like, oh yeah, that was so funny that I got so like worked up over it, but in reality that's really nothing compared to like what could have been. And I don't regret like any of the decisions I made whenever I was like a lot younger and inexperienced because of those things. Like I didn't know better and now I do. And I get to just live my life the way I wanted to back then. So
I love it. This kind of idea of, one, failure is inevitable, and the more we fail, the better we get at it. The more we can bounce back
yeah,
and be like, you know what? Kind of have this mindset of I think pretty much everything we experience in life, we either one can look back and laugh on it, or two, look back and just be like, hey, you know what? That time was hard, but I'm here and I'm smiling on the other side. Like that is guaranteed for both of them, right? Like we're not always going to look back on like a death and be like, haha, like whatever. But we can look back and say, I know that that consumed me, that disappointment consumed me at that time. But here I am, however many months, years down the line, and it is not my everything anymore. And so I think keeping that perspective is going to be really important. And I have to do that too, you know. I definitely have to do that too. And I think the other thing that I wanted to touch on that you said is uh, just like this idea of the bar shouldn't be perfection. The bar should be, what is it that you care about? What is it that you value? And what is it that you expect from yourself? And it is, folks, I hate to say it because I need to say it to myself too. Perfection is not a reasonable standard. Okay. Because what perfect means is you make no mistakes. So that shouldn't be your bar. You know what I mean? What your bar should be is giving your best, right? Your bar should be doing what you can to show up that day. And sometimes showing up that day, your best is not going to look the same every day. Some days we don't get a lot of sleep. Some days, like whatever. So, how can that be your bar that changes every day? But sort of the median of it is you've given your best every day. And even if failure, even when failure happens, that if you are working to sort of meet that bar, failure doesn't have to shake you, right? Because I think failure, even with failure, you can still meet the bar. You can still exceed the bar. Does that make sense?
So I think that a really bad ideology concerning failure is that you should always avoid it. And then if you do deal with failure, that means it's a bad idea. I
Exactly.
honestly, like, it comes from this culture of like not being able to make mistakes, but that's never going to happen. So whenever failure does happen, you leave yourself unprepared rather than thinking like there's a balance to everything. There's really great times and there's bad times. So what? Like that's life. Like kind of just like grow up into it. And we're all like, especially in this age group that we're considering our audiences, like this is so early in our lives. Like it's hard to imagine now, but like 20 years down the line, what of these like mistakes are you actually going to remember and care so much about still?
And to
Like
be
it,
honest, Mariamawit, I don't think anything. Like so much of the mistakes that I thought were like, oh my gosh, I didn't get into St. John's. This like, that private school in Houston? Yeah, I was like,
yeah,
oh, I didn't get in. I don't give an F. You know what I mean? Like literally, I'm like, what? Like bigger and better things. You know what I mean? So I don't even know what mistakes could haunt us.
hmm I think that's what made like what I value in my life so much more clear to me because
Mm.
the things that I would remember are always going to be like how I perceive others and my actions towards people I really care about, or even to
Mm.
like those are the things that I know I'll live with, where I want to make sure that like all of my interactions are coming across as pure as I can intend and not to like cause any more harm in this world than I like intend to. Like it's just a way of like gauging my like academic and career goals and like my mistakes there and like saying like, well, I didn't like kill anyone, so I think I'm doing pretty good. Like there's not really a huge mistake I'm gonna remember on my deathbed where it's just like, oh crap, like I shouldn't have done that, I regret it so much. Like no, like I've lived a pretty good life, a full life, which means that there were mistakes there, but I don't regret any of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I also, you're not going to know where I'm getting what I'm getting at with this question until after, but can you tell us where you have worked over the summer since your freshman year?
Yeah, so freshman year summer, I worked at this nonprofit called Meals for Families. And do you want me to describe what they were or just list them? Okay, I'll describe them. So this nonprofit was geared towards a website and a new website we ended up creating that directs families towards free school meals, especially during the summers, especially because during COVID, schools were closed, but people who rely on those like free meals like each day at lunch, they were kind of left underserved. So this nonprofit was aimed towards like directing families towards like any local meetup points at schools or other community centers where they're giving out meals to kids, especially whenever they can't really afford it anymore. So I really loved that goal. It was one of the things that I'm really glad I was part of, especially based off like my own history. And then the sophomore year summer, I worked as a Google Step intern, and this is like a program for introducing students towards like engineering and like software engineering at Google. This was in California. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. Then the next summer, which was like the most recent summer, I worked at Google again as a software engineering intern in California.
So one, congratulations, Mariamawit. Like those are all amazing achievements, and I especially like what you did your freshman summer, like just being able to help meaningfully help families that have been affected by the pandemic and all of that. Like that's amazing. And I think that is so value aligned with your mission to want to help people and have concern for others. And the reason that I had you list all of that is because for anybody that was like, oh man, like, she talked about how this C on her transcript freshman year, like she said that it didn't really matter to her. The reason I had you spell that out is to show people and to remind you that no mistake defines you, right? And there is a way to come back meaningfully from everything that in that moment you feel like is earth shattering. And so that's people's evidence right there. And your evidence too of like, when you feel like the world is crumbling and you're like, dang, this mistake is really gonna mess up my life, it won't,
Yeah, that should really comfort people, because for me, I was in this
and there was no way you would have known. Your freshman year self would not have known that this was going to happen. But I'm just saying, okay, now it should comfort people. Go ahead.
exactly, because I didn't know that it would not really be as much of an obstacle as I like played it up to be whenever it first happened. But whenever I was like, I think joining as a freshman at Duke, there was this panel offered by like the Mary Lou Williams Center. I think it was before I came to Duke, and someone talking there, I'm pretty sure I know who it was. I don't want to say it just in case I forgot. But this person was talking about how I think he left his university whenever he was a student on like academic probation, and he came back, and then he was someone that like I was just so glad to have met, like to that point where like he had his turnaround, came back to school maybe after several years, I think, after being on academic probation, maybe a decade, if I'm not mistaken. And like just seeing that like there are so many things that like so many ways that life can really take you and take other people, like the strangers you meet, but then they're still going to end up somewhere that they're proud to be and like really happy to be. It should make it so much like more easier to make those mistakes with like the intent to just learn from it and move on, like literally just always move on.
I think too, no, sometimes we can control whether we make a mistake, right? Like, okay, I didn't study enough for that test. Well, sorry, Billy Bob, like that did fall on you, right? But other times, mistakes and failures happen even when we've done everything that we can and it still doesn't work out. And I think the mindset that I'm really trying to beat into my head, because I don't even want to act like I'm on my high horse here, like, oh yeah, failure, it doesn't affect me, because it does, right? Like I was just shaken up about a grad school application just this past like semester. And what I will say is my reframe has been, this sucks, this is disappointing, but I will come back from this. I will turn this around, right? This does not have to define me. And if you can say that to yourself and mean it and trust yourself to pursue the action steps to do whatever it is, turn it around, you will never stay stuck in that rut. I believe that. I believe you can manifest that fate for yourself,
Yes, and I think one of my favorite ways, like whenever I have like very low moments or feel like it's a mistake or situation I won't get unstuck from, I think the best way I always help myself is talking to someone, whether it's like a professional, like maybe a career expert I know, or someone who's like a club leader, director, or even a medical professional if it's that way. Like I think there's always a chance to really get those thoughts rationalized, and for someone to say like, oh, that's no big deal, like let me help you figure this out and we'll get you back to where you should be. And then I think that really plays into how you describe like doing your best every day. sometimes your best is a different level than it was the day before. So you're still doing your best. It's just like a different version.
Yeah, that's this is just like all moving me. The last thing I want to touch on in our last few minutes together is this idea of, and you're gonna think I'm so corny because this totally relates to the class that we're taking together.
Okay.
But I feel like it follows suit from, you said that your best way, your best strategy to get unstuck when you're kind of in those stickier moments is to talk to people, right? And you have these horizontal mentors, which are people like me. You also have like these the vertical mentors, which are people that are already in the field, whatever. So talk to us a little bit about how you have found community at Duke and how you have, going back to this value that you have of meaningfully impacting others, how you have positively contributed to some sort of community at Duke. And then we're gonna wrap it there.
Okay. So just to make sure I got that. So how I found my mentors, and then also how I've contributed to communities at Duke. Perfect. Okay. So first for my mentors, I really only started Duke with maybe one mentor that was outside of family. And then it just really prospered into such a great network I'm so grateful for. I think it started with joining Baldwin Scholars. It was one of the best things I've ever been part of, I think, at Duke, but also in my life. Like, I think it's such a lifelong community I'm so grateful to be part of. It gave me so many people who are my horizontal mentors, but then also just having like the director who's absolutely amazing, and then the rest of the faculty, the alumni this has brought me in like contact with. And then there's also Duke Technology Scholars, or like DTech. It's such a great program that like I've met such amazing people in it who are like friends, but then also like lifelong mentors and people I'm just very glad to have met, even for just an event. It's just such a great way to meet amazing people. And the program leaders were actually who I was like in thinking of, as well as like our director for Baldwin, whenever you asked me about mentors, because whenever I had those moments where maybe I was even making a huge career switch or kind of questioning what I'm doing at Duke or something, I just pop onto Calendly. I'm like, let me talk to them, and then just chat with them. And then they're just like, oh no, Mariam, what you're doing like so well. I'm like, oh my God, okay. And it just makes my life like just so much more full of like blessings, because they really just like help me figure out like who I am and like what do I actually want to do. So then those things that I can't do don't really weigh on me, because it's not what I actually like doing anyway. So why not find like the thing I really enjoy? Then there's also Grace Hopper Conference. They gave me a several years coaching mentor who I absolutely adore. She's like in Italy right now sending me pictures, and she's just been like such a great part of my life. I'm so happy to have met her and helped me guide, like she guided me through like a lot of career stuff, connected me to so many other people. Just an amazing person. I met her through the Grace Hopper Conference, and it was a scholarship for this coaching session that I've been having like for years now, offered by Anita B. And then I think those are the main people I think of whenever I consider mentors. But then they like connected me to like that next circle of like mentors, like people I've met through them, and then the alumni network of Duke, or even at like the companies I worked at. It's just like just prospered over the years, and that's specific to tech, but all of these people have also been part of my like life decisions or knowing where I'm at. So it's absolutely amazing. But my family is also like the biggest mentors I've ever had my whole life, and they just always like guide me through those like life decisions, and then keeping me on track of like caring about those things like life, happiness, family, all those like stuff that I really like want to live my life for, rather than like money or something. And then for the impact on like community, I think being part of the programs I'm at Duke make it very easy to feel like I'm contributing, because just showing up and like now this year helping underclassmen figure out what they want to do. And I was just like, oh my God, I used to be you. But like they're so like interested in what they're doing, and I want to support that. And a specific program I'm in outside of Duke is Growth NC. I have to reach out to them again, because I'm an on and off mentor where you get to help like young Black women, well, young Black girls who are like in elementary, middle school, sometimes high school, trying to do like their homework. Maybe they want someone to like read to or chat with, or like even they need help with like college applications or something. And those things always like remind me that like my life isn't just going to be about me, and I want to keep it that way and just do something to help others, because I benefited so much from having people who cared about me in my life, whether they're people I've met for like a short amount of time or long-term people who I really care about.
Thank you, Mariamawit, for not just that eloquent answer, but for being on this podcast with me, being on this interview. And I will just say, like, I love that your perspective that this life is not just about us. And I want to give you the reassurance that, like, in this 45-minute to an hour long conversation, you have not just impacted all those people that are going to be listening, but you've impacted me. And like, I feel a sense of groundedness from just your authenticity, your rawness, your willingness to literally just donate your time to sit here and talk to me, and to invest in something that I care about, and to share your story with others that both I know you and I care about mentoring. And so I just want to give you the validation that that concern that you have for others and the value you place on others, you are living it every day, including today. And so I'm just very grateful for you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure the work that you're doing here, it's not just going to help one life, but so many others. And someone listening is just going to be impacted for the rest of their life because of what they're doing, what you're doing right now.
Thank
so
you so much. All right, guys, we are going to wrap up this interview. Bye.
Bye.